Hey everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to continue working through the NPCs of Stardew Valley. Last time we talked about Demetrius, who was actually the inspiration for this entire series. Today though, we're going to come back down from the mountains and talk about a villager that I just really don't see getting much attention at all. And when she does, it's usually just people confused about why they can't marry her. Jodi is the mother of Vincent and Sam and the wife of Kent. She lives at 1 Willow Lane with her 2 sons for the first year before her husband comes back from army. Family is kind of a weird one though. It makes sense that the dynamic is kind of strained with Kent having experienced some trauma during his time as a prisoner of war, but even before Kent comes home, there are hints that something is up with Jodi, especially as you get to higher heart levels with her. Let's start from the beginning of your relationship with Jodi though. At low heart levels, Jodi seems to be an almost stereotypical version of a housewife, at least an American one I guess. Most of her dialogue revolves around maintaining the household. She'll talk about cleaning the house, setting aside time for exercise, saving money by shopping at JojaMart versus Pierre's, and you can even catch some dialogue about her husband if you're diligent. She'll mention that she's prayed at Yoba's altar for her husband's safe return, and that sometimes it's still hard to stay positive, which is, pretty sad, par for the course. We talked about it a little in Kent's video, but apparently there are stories of soldiers being shot to pieces, according to Vincent, so there's a good reason for Jodi's concern. All villagers have seasonal dialogue changes, and Jodi is no different. In the summer, she begins to speak more about how she has no time. She's always catching up on housework, worrying about dinner, and trying to keep the garden in shape. In the fall, she talks about how she spoils her sons, but here's where things start to kind of change a little bit. Jodi has a fall-specific dialogue where she says that you have to leave your old lifestyle behind when you become a parent. Maybe it's not entirely true, she says, but she warns you that it'll happen if you're not careful. In winter, Jodi returns to dialogue regarding her family. She says she loves being able to play in the snow with her kids. She worries about Sam's music disturbing the neighbors. Oh, but wait. She also says, "What do I do for fun? I like sleeping. And it would be nice to take a vacation every once in a while. And she would hire a maid and a chef if she were rich." I mean, those are all things I agree with, honestly, especially sleeping as a hobby. But it seems like there are little cracks starting to form in the facade, at least a little bit. Also, this is my token reminder to subscribe and turn on all those notifications for my channel because I know people love it when you beg them, and so here I am. Also, if you want to help support the channel and help me keep making weird stuff, check out the join button and look at the different membership tiers. Awesome. Anyway, sorry. Back to the interesting stuff. Once you've reached 6 hearts with Jodi, you'll start to hear more of her real feelings. There are 3 dialogues at 6 hearts and 2 more at 8 hearts that we're going to look at today. First of all, at 6 hearts, number 1. It's nice to have a family, but I'd be lying if I said I never long for the freedom of youth. Sure, that makes sense. Raising kids is a big responsibility. A lot of time and energy goes into it, and Jodi had to give up some freedom. It's understandable that sometimes she longs for those simpler days, right? Number 2. Where does all the time go? I remember when Sam was a little baby wearing diapers. He was such a cute little kid. Don't tell him I said that. You must really like talking to me, huh? This one's kind of weird to me. I think this is also a dialogue that kind of glorifies the past a little bit. Jodi is remembering a time when things were simpler or cuter, I guess. She's feeling nostalgic, we might say. I think that's a bit of a theme for Jodi, actually. Number 3. Sometimes I dream about life on my own, without a family to look after. Is that horrible? Don't tell anyone. This one is tough. I'm not a parent, but I know that your identity does change a little bit when you become one. Like Caroline, we never really hear what Jodi did prior to her marriage, so we have this woman whose entire identity is mother and wife, just kind of the way that I described her earlier. Let's move on to the 8-heart dialogue. Again, these aren't scenes, this is just text that we can hear when we're close enough friends, so presumably anyone that knows Jodi could know this. Number 1. I had a dream that I had complete freedom, no obligation to anyone but myself. Then I woke up and realized that I had a full day of house chores ahead of me. And number 2. We kind of rushed into our marriage, with Kent being a soldier and all. I hardly got a taste of youth and freedom, and now it's too late to ever go back. Just don't make the same mistake. Yikes. Alright, let's try to unpack this. Jodi got married young without really experiencing her youth. Presumably, she also had children young, but more Sam than Vincent, and I do have kind of a theory about that as well. She dreams of freedom and a lack of obligations. She feels guilty about wishing she had that freedom, but she still fondly remembers her son's early years as well. I mean, at this point, not really even a theory. Jodi obviously has regrets about her marriage, and it seems like she does feel a little trapped, at least occasionally. I will say, though, that she does have a dialogue line where she says, "I don't regret having a family. Sam and Vincent mean everything to me," and that's in relation to the dialogue where she says, she woke up and realized she had a lot of chores to do or whatever. I do think it's interesting, though, that Kent's name is not included in that list. One thing that keeps being brought up in my comment section is the coincidence that the name of the only soldier's wife in the valley is Jodi, which is a name frequently used in military cadences. Jodi is the civilian that stays home while the soldier is away, and generally he's like the guy that your significant other cheats on you with. I don't know if Concerned Ape picked that name out on purpose. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to hear he did. However, I do want to step back to Vincent because maybe some people think he's not Kent's son and that a Jodi was the father, and I don't think that's the case. In fact, I'm more confident in these kids' parentage than I am for most of the valley. I do think there's something kind of interesting about that age gap, though, and I think it ties back into that feeling of being almost trapped in the marriage or in the family. I kind of have a guess, and this isn't totally supported, but I have a guess that Vincent was conceived when the joy of child rearing started fading from raising Sam, if that makes sense. As he found himself in those young, angsty teenage years and he just wasn't a pleasant person to be around, I have a feeling that Jodi looked back on those wonderful days when he was wearing diapers and she was rocking him to sleep and she didn't remember all of the staying up every single night or waking up every hour on the hour. And she thought that, another child would bring her back to that time in her life. And maybe it did. But at this point, current day, while we are playing, Jodi is perhaps realizing that she, like her best friend Caroline, settled down maybe a bit too young. And she's finding out that there's really no way to get those years back. And that's what's causing this feeling of almost resentment. Honestly, I think Jodi is possibly the best parent in the entire valley. It's a nice little departure from what we saw with Robin and Demetrius lately. She cares deeply for her sons, and she puts a lot of effort into raising them and caring for her family. I just think that sometimes, while she's laying in her too small bed, in her too small room at the end of a hallway, with her husband who came back from war just a little bit different, that she kind of wonders, what would life have been like if I didn't tie the knot so early? What if I spent more time living before settling down? And she's never gonna know. What do you think about Jodi? And what do you think about their family? I don't see as much conversation about this family as I do about some of the other ones. So I'd like to hear what your thoughts and theories are. Thank you all for checking this one out, and I will hope to see you in the next video.